You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. We start with the breaking, developing story of the day. That is that John Bolton, former national security advisor, essentially the guy known on the right as the backstabber to the Trump administration, the first one, in regard to setting up a lot of, let's say, questionable means in investigating and raiding the Trump home in Mar-a-Lago, not to mention a lot of accusations about President Trump and how he viewed the troops and national security and Vladimir Putin of Russia, etc. And now he has been indicted on a good hefty chunk of charges by a grand jury. You remember his house was raided by FBI earlier this year, and the pearl clutching that followed on networks like MSNBC. And now Nicole Wallace and the reporter have to read the charges of John Bolton on the air. Here you go.
Yeah, so John Bolton was charged with 18 federal counts, and I apologize, I'm going to look down. I'm reading this. We're still just getting this. We have the first 8 counts are transmission of national defense information. The second set of 9 counts, that's counts 9 through 18, is retention of national defense information. And that looks like it's U.S. Code Title 19, Section 793D and E, which is part of the Espionage Act. Now, there was another statute that they were considering, and it looks like they've only charged him with those Espionage Act statutes, but we're still reading through this indictment. It's 26 pages long. There's a lot of background information here, and I apologize, but we're literally just getting this in right now, so I'm still reading through it.
Well, I read through it. And do you know why I read through it? Because I already read through a lot of this stuff. You guys know how difficult it is for us on the Tony Kinnett Cast to toot our own horn. So from our social media team at the Daily Signal, I will read their words as to why you, if you're a first-time watcher, should stick around and subscribe to the Tony Kinnett Cast. From our Daily Signal account, quote, "Why should you subscribe to the TKC? Because back in July, when DNI Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released the reports on Bolton, Comey, Brennan, Obama, etc., Tony was the first guy out of the gate to predict that these would end up as indictments on charges of violating the Espionage Act of 1917. And to the point where I was actually kind of teased by some of the other right-wing and centrist news outlets out there. I'm a national correspondent for the Daily Signal. My job during the day, when I'm not dressing up as a national broadcaster, is to go on other broadcaster shows and talk about the stuff going on around the country. And I predicted it looks like these guys violated a lot of Espionage Act of 1917 stuff. You can't just screw around with U.S. intelligence. It's not legal. And there were some chuckles. Oh, well, you know exactly what he's going to be charged on, do you? And now here we are. So let's dig through some of these because, as I said, unlike the MSNBC crew, I have read through the background. From the John Bolton indictment, Bolton's personal email, which contained classified info, sound familiar, was hacked by Iran. Now, Bolton notified the government of the hack, which you're supposed to do. But here's the problem. He did not mention that he was also in possession digitally of the classified information and documents. So this is a two-pronged problem. Number one, if you notify the government, hey, I think I have been attacked by some type of a foreign threat and that there is now classified information that has now been compromised, then your computer, essentially any trace of the information that was on your computer is completely scrubbed, cleaned, and removed because of two things. Number one, if the hacking came in through your computer, anything else on your computer or your device is compromised as well. We don't know yet whether they got to it. We're still finding that information out. Here's the second issue, though. This is why I encourage people, don't click on emails, and especially do not open attachments of emails like documents. Because some of the malware that foreign countries like Iran use to get at individuals in the government is by essentially embedding part of the malware, or the Trojan in this case, in the PDF, in the document file, in the email file. And then Bolton, by keeping those documents anyway, when he was not supposed to, essentially could have then taken that digital file, shoved it into the filing cabinet. Again, that's an theoretically could be an infected file, shoved it into the filing cabinet of his other documents he was hoarding, like Smeagol with the One Ring, my precious. And then Iran theoretically could have access to all of the other national security documents that Bolton was hoarding. Throughout his short tenure as national security advisor, this is the other issue with Bolton, there are several, he regularly leaked classified information to his memoir editors. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I despise politicians who are so obsessed with themselves that they all feel they need memoirs and biographies and autobiographies. I have only ever written one book, and it is basically an extended version of a paper I wrote about my great uncle, who in World War I was a motorcycle scout called a wagoner, and he delivered intelligence. It's literally just like a slightly extended version of that. I'm not interested in writing any memoirs or biographies, because that's silly. I'm a politician. I'm a pundit. I'm a guy who gets out there and breaks down the political news. Politicians aren't special. They're supposed to be civil servants. But this idea that you get a memoir or some kind of a shadow writer, and all of a sudden this guy we didn't elect, whether he's writing for Biden or writing for Bolton or writing for Richard freaking Simmons, is taking all of their information they've ever been given. And now this third party who has unsecured devices, who also may be targeted. You say, Tony, how do you know that their writer might be targeted? The latter half of the Harry Potter books by J.K. Rowling were all leaked months in advance, this in the mid-aughts, because people were hacking the secondary typists and editor and proofreaders' accounts. People who hack and try to steal information, they know how to do this. Next, pursuant to a settlement concerning his memoir, Bolton would provide individuals with thousands of pages of notes memorializing his time at the NSA. Pursuant to a settlement concerning his memoir, Bolton had agreed to provide the United States with all the classified documents in his possession. No. And one of the reasons you saw FBI agents hauling big old boxes like UPS deliverers was because the man ended up getting, there was, again, all of these old DC men keeping boxes of documents in their garage next to their cars. The only thing we keep in our garage is a couple of broken mop and paint handles and a 3D printer that's seen better days. If I have documents, again, filing cabinets, stored access, goodness gracious, it's a mess. Now, even CNN admits now he is in serious doo-doo, and it's not political prosecution.
And from our Caitlin Polans, who has been reporting on the possible indictment of John Bolton, the former national security advisor for President Trump in his first term. Caitlin, what do we know?
Casey, John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, a longtime federal government official, has been indicted by a grand jury. We are learning that through two different sources from our producer, Hannah Rabinowitz at the Justice Department. And we have confirmed that the grand jury was in today with the lead prosecutor on that case, the same prosecutor who had been on some of the documents of the search of Bolton's house just 2 months ago, or not even 2 months ago, a prosecutor who also has some experience in investigating these sorts of things. He was a prosecutor that was also working on the Biden classified documents handling investigation that
I have said it before. I am going to say it again. The reason that we did not immediately see the Trump administration come into office and start slinging out indictments like a short order cook is because if you're going to do it, it is worth doing correctly. Now that they have done the searches, now they have the actual experts getting in there, you're not seeing Sean Diddy Combs, bunch of charges that sound really bad, and then it's essentially the guy gets off the hook. They actually have people going through and doing the due diligence on this, which means that it's far more likely you're going to get results and you can't squiggle and wiggle your way out of it. Here's the good part.
Led to no charges. But in this situation, the bulk of this case, it's been going on for several years. And our understanding is that it's about John Bolton's use of an email account with AOL, an email account where he was writing diary-like notes and summaries of his time as national security advisor to himself.
That's so gay. That is just so gay. He was a national security advisor for all of about 15 minutes because he was about as trustworthy as Flint, Michigan tap water. And the idea that he was writing, Dear John Bolton, I was national security advisor today. A child in the airport pointed at me and laughed. More tomorrow, John Bolton. Essentially, it's that America Force show where Matt Damon gets up in front of people and just says his name over and over. Matt Damon. Radio crew, we got to send you over to commercial before the FCC comes after my kneecaps. We'll be on the live stream in the meantime. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Then the CNN crew gets to the best part here, which is that it doesn't look like there's any political prosecution whatsoever.
Times even sending them to his wife and daughter. And that is the sort of thing that the Justice Department does say frequently, not just in the climate of a Trump administration, that that's something that you should not do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sending things to your wife and your sister. Just, classified. I've had access to classified documents. Never once did I go, you know who really needs to see this? My sister. No. Now, by the way, the man also, of course, did do the political glee on the other end, because there are people who are freaking out. Oh, Trump's going after everyone, political prosecution. Here's Bolton, positively jubilant, wishing that Jack Smith would throw Trump into court way earlier.
Well, I think it's a devastating indictment. It's very powerful in the way that it's portrayed, but it's also very narrow, very targeted. The government didn't throw everything in the kitchen sink at the wall. It has focused this in a way that I think, as a matter of law, is going to be very difficult for the president to resist. I think the real question is the question of timing and scheduling. If Donald Trump were an honest man, if he were an innocent man, he'd be saying, I want the trial within 30 days. I want this cloud removed from over my head. I want this stain on my reputation removed.
He's going out, we need to get him in court faster, says John Bolton. Listen to him. Can you imagine reading a memoir by John Bolton? As a guy who has, in fact, published a book, I've already gotten a detail from it wrong, by the way. It was my great-great-great-grandfather, not my great-uncle. That was a World War II story. Don't read memoirs and stories like that. No, go read things that actually have substantial value. Don't read John Bolton. Ridiculous nonsense continues when you get over to Letitia James, who is now throwing just like a complete conniption fit. Why? Because, she's getting nervous. It turns out her crimes are less political prosecution and, harboring a fugitive from justice. And, of course, the blatant investment fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud, mortgage fraud.
I would say what she said. But first of all, the decision was based on the Administrative Procedure Act, an arbitrary and capricious act by this agency, and an unlawful act. And so, too, is the indictment. It's baseless. It's nothing more than retribution. Retribution for basically doing my job.
Oh, that's rich.
For doing my job following a 2-year investigation and a congressional hearing. It wasn't political. It was based on facts and the application of the evidence. And the judgment was sustained. The amount of the disgorgement was what was dismissed. But the judgment remains. And so at this point in time, we will...
She's so completely lost. She, again, has been asked about the crimes that she's committed. And instead of talking about anything relating to that, she's automatically going to, well, yeah, sure, a lot of the stuff in my case against Trump was dismissed because it was ridiculous, but it was actually very, very good, and I was just doing my job. Sure, there's a lot of video of me running around saying I'm going to get Trump by any means necessary. She literally ran on the quote, I'll get Trump, end quote. Okay. And now the shoe is on the other foot. I'm amazed at the lack of... I don't know. What's the right word for this? The lack of self-awareness, perhaps? Bolton and Comey and Brennan and, of course, former President Obama and Letitia James, Fani Willis in Georgia, Jack Smith in D.C., Merrick Garland as Biden's attorney general, they played stupid games. And now, you've got the public clearinghouse people with the big, massive check coming around with the prize they've all won, which could be a long prison sentence. And they don't, all of a sudden, they don't want to answer the door. They've entered the sweepstakes. They didn't think they'd be selected. Now, Trump, on the other hand, is also ruffling some feathers today. Those would be Russian feathers. We're going to talk about those in a second. We got to pick the radio crew back up from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
So while Hamas has not yet disarmed, and they are shooting their own in the street. By the way, all of the ceasefire people who were angry about a genocide, now there are more Palestinian Arabs in Gaza that are being killed than any day-on-day action in the Israeli-Hamas war. You don't hear any of the genocide people talking about that now, do you? Oh, no? Oh, no. Sorry. Again, there are two things that you're not allowed to mention in regard to this genocide conversation. The Christians actually being slaughtered in mass in Africa and Asia. And then, of course, number two, that Hamas and the Gaza population will not be welcomed in by any of the bordering or regional Muslim neighborhood countries. So that said, in the meantime, President Trump has decided that now he's interested in dealing with the Ukraine-Russo war at basically the same way that he dealt with the Israeli-Hamas war, which is that if you're going to play stupid games, then fine. I'm done treating you with, kind respect, believing that you might actually know what's best. And that includes a plan by the Trump administration to stuff a bunch of Tomahawk missiles into a box and allow Ukraine to play ball. Of course, funded by NATO instead of by you, the taxpayer. NATO has to buy them. So here was the president being asked about that. And I got to say, one of the most hilarious questions by reporters who I don't think say the question they're going to ask the president in their head before they ask said question. I'll show you what I mean.
Right, but did President Putin try to dissuade you from selling Tomahawk missiles?
Did Putin try to dissuade you from sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine? Here's the president's answer.
What do you think he's going to say? Please sell Tomahawks? Is he going to say, please sell those Tomahawks? I really appreciate it. I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand Tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way.
Now, to his opposition. Again, that's a jab from Trump at Putin killing his political opposites. I was told that Trump was licking Putin's feet and all kinds of stuff, that he was, bending over for the Russian whatever. So he's cut the Indian bank through Prime Minister Modi of buying Russian oil. So he's hurting the Russian economy. He's hurting Russia's key ally, China, by essentially taking away Argentinian soybeans from them. And then at the same time, now he's going after Russia directly by supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Dmitry Medvedev, the president for 15 seconds and now the popsicle stick defense minister, has no idea what to do over there at all. And Trump is getting greedy. Essentially, Trump's idea is the New York Patriots. Like when, they got a couple Super Bowl rings in the bag. And so what did Belichick do back in the day? He's like, let's do the exact same strategy over again because it worked. And that's how Brady knocked over a couple extra Super Bowls. And I say that as like a Colts and Eagles fan. So like me admitting Patriots' success is like asking me to say I like the state of Connecticut. I don't care for that at all. Now, how are the Democrats doing right now? Oh no, indeed. So right now, as we speak, Jay Jones is the Democrat Attorney General candidate in Virginia. And he's going up against Jason Miyares, who has been the Attorney General. Right now, he's the incumbent from the Youngkin administration. Jay Jones was beating out Republican Miyares by like 10 or 15 points. And then texts were revealed showing that, Jay Jones wanted his political, like some speaker of the House that he never ran against. He wanted him dead. He wanted his wife and his kids dead. And also he wanted a bunch of police officers dead. So they're debating. We're going to have some clips on that here in just a couple of minutes because the opening strategy for the Democrats in the midterm election comes down to how they're doing with Virginia and New Jersey. Normally, we would be talking about what policies Democrats are putting on the floor in Congress, but they're not doing any of that right now. They're doing some town halls and, I think Sarah McBride was talking about his penis a little bit. And then you had AOC and Bernie flapping their arms at Kristen Collins on CNN. But realistically, the Democrat strategy, like the key core strategy for this election coming up in 2026, is mirrored on the battleground in the rest of the country, not just in the Beltway, but actually in various state races now, like, again, the New Jersey gubernatorial, preparing for some Ohio elections next year, and then, of course, the Commonwealth of Virginia. So Jay Jones, in addressing this evening his text messages, he goes right at the beginning, I'm going to address, these are the errors that I made, and let's see what he does with them.
Now tonight, you're going to hear two very different visions for the future of this Commonwealth. And you're also going to hear from my opponent about text messages that I sent that I deeply, deeply regret. Let me be very clear. I am ashamed.
Can we stop doing the Obama line? Like, can every politician out there who is, 2 shades east of a mocha, can we stop going, let me be clear? And then, like, awkwardly pausing as though you didn't memorize this in your bathroom that morning? Producer Nick?
Why do you need permission to speak clearly? To just say what you want to say?
No one ever goes, let me be unclear. Skibbity bobbity boo.
Can I obfuscate what I'm about to say as much as possible, please?
Well, here he goes.
I am embarrassed, and I'm sorry. I am sorry to Speaker Gilbert. I'm sorry to his family.
I am sorry, Mr. Krabs. I am sorry, Giant Clam. This is ridiculous.
I'm sorry to my family, and I'm sorry to every single Virginian. I cannot take back what I said.
He didn't say anything about apologizing for saying, yeah, if a couple police officers need to die so that Black Lives Matter can grow, so be it.
But you have my word that I will always be accountable for my mistakes. And you also have my word that I will spend every waking moment fighting for you.
So I'm dropping out of the Virginia Attorney General race because I have made mistakes that disqualify me from being the Attorney General of the state.
Now, again, Jason is going to try to make this race about my mistakes. But
yeah, that's what a debate's about.
This race has always been about more. It's always been about each and every one of you and the future of this Commonwealth.
Anytime that a Democrat finishes a speech where essentially they have just kicked themselves in an uncomfortable place, they always round it out by saying, you know what it's really about? You. And then they give you the Care Bear stare. Now, we'll move on from that for a second because I do want to tell you a little bit about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Last night, AOC and Bernie Sanders were on CNN with Kristen Collins doing a town hall. It should have been a slam dunk, easy move, wonderful time. And instead, it's an example I've used today. It was like watching the Harlem Globetrotters lose to the Generals. They shouldn't have made mistakes. Instead, you had AOC. Again, people say that she's like gained intelligence. Here's AOC talking about the most important environmental policy that she has.
Talking about that instead of talking about real issues that affect our lives. Instead of talking about healthcare, instead of talking about wages, instead of talking about having air that's drinkable.
Having air that's drinkable. Yes. I too enjoy drinking a nice tall draft of that Midwestern breeze. Maybe she's talking about LaCroix. That stuff kind of tastes like air. Anyway, so that's high intelligence from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Maybe say, look, she just misspoke. You know, we all have mistakes. God knows, Tony, you flubber all the time. You're darn tootin' right, I do. Then she says this.
Rivers in rural areas were on fire because of corporations poisoning the people who lived in those areas. Poor middle-class communities getting poisoned and dumped on by corporations like Deloitte and 3M, pouring chemicals into these places. And they want to call it a Democratic priority.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with that. Radio crew, we got to send you guys over to the commercial. When we get back, we're going to talk about Schumer and Hakeem just having a real rough time of it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll continue on the live stream. Now, to address AOC's disaster point by point here, and it really is important because what she says is so blisteringly wrong in 3 different ways. I mean, remember that Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, was completely cut out of his race in 2016 because he wasn't able to tell you what part, like he couldn't point to Aleppo, Syria on a map. But anyway, here, let's go through AOC's incredible environmental speech here, which sounds good, sort of.
Rivers in rural areas were on fire.
Rivers in rural areas were on fire. There has been one major U.S. river in like kind of the natural disaster that she's talking about here that is in Cleveland, Ohio. The river in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know how to pronounce the name of it. The Shigoya River, something like that. In 1969, did in fact catch on fire because there was an oil spill. And the oil sat on the water, was accidentally ignited, and it was a big national story because it was in an industrial zone of Cleveland. You know, and so not a rural area. I guess according to a liberal bartender from New York, any city that's not New York or DC or LA might as well be rural. Let her keep going here.
Because of corporations poisoning the people who lived in those areas, poor middle-class communities getting poisoned and dumped on by corporations like Deloitte and 3M.
Okay. So first of all, Deloitte is a tax and accounting company. Now, I don't know how many printer cartridges you're maybe going through a year as a tax and accounting firm. I don't know of any that dump into the river, much less in Cleveland, but that stuff's not flammable. And it was quickly pointed out online that what she maybe have meant was DuPont. DuPont is a large chemical company. Here's the problem with that, though. And I did in fact break out the atlas for this. So in that 1969 oil fire in Cleveland, Ohio, DuPont wasn't anywhere near involved with that. Neither was 3M. In fact, there was no DuPont facility within about 200 miles of Cleveland. Now, there is a DuPont facility that got in trouble for dumping, I believe, the chemical C8 into some tributaries of the Ohio River in Woods County, West Virginia. But you guessed it, that's more than 200 miles away. The actual facility in, not Parkersville, the city in Wood County right next to Parkersville. But that's where that particular DuPont facility is. The Ohio River does not flow into, again, I'm going to mispronounce, the Shigoya River, whatever, the river up in Cleveland. Rivers in this hemisphere don't flow north. So even if she had misspoken, she's either stupid or she's a liar. You get one of the two. Either she's lying about American company. Again, has DuPont made chemical mistakes? Absolutely. Just like Norfolk Southern is partly responsible for the East Palestine disaster, which she never gave an F about. But all of a sudden, she's on her little environmental kick. She has no idea what she's talking about. By the way, where's the Bill Nyes and the science guys about this? Why is the former science teacher from Eastern Central Indiana have to come and fact check you on very basic history? Why am I the one that has to know, like, basic natural disaster? You're Miss Environmentalist Green Girl. You don't even know what companies are responsible for major disasters? That's like in Animal House when he's like, did we give up when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Incredible. So this brings us to Chuck Schumer, because they had a really, 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 really rough night regarding Chuckles. And I want you to see this.
But are you saying that Senator Schumer should not be worried about a primary challenge from you?
No.
Let me jump in on this one. This is what
we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
This is what we're talking about.
You have a country that is falling apart. We had a housing crisis, a healthcare crisis, an education crisis, massive income and wealth inequality, a corrupt campaign finance system, and the media says, "Oh, you're going to run? What are you going to run for?" Nobody cares. So one more time.
Nobody cares. It's the House Speaker and President Trump and the Vice President saying it.
Right.
Pardon?
Well, of course, they're saying it to deflect attention away from the real issue.
Exactly.
And here, let me tell you what the real issue is. Let's see if CNN talks about it. We're living in the richest country in the history.
I love it. Again, Schumer is the leader amidst a government shutdown, and they can't seem to figure this out. Schumer's completely lost the people who are pushing CNN to ask that question are not just regular random people around the country. It's Democrats in the House and the Senate. So we're going to swing back in a second here and talk with Rob Bluey, because this is some wild stuff. Jeffries is bad, even worse. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast with special guest Rob Bluey.
That's right. You heard the Bluey song. That means it's time for my boss's boss, Rob Bluey, the president of the Daily Signal, who spends far too much time in two places, Washington, D.C., and his home state of New York. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's always good to visit my folks and see some friends back home. But wow, New York is in a sad state under the governorship of Kathy Hochul and the other Democrat leaders right now. It's pretty pathetic.
I have no idea how Western and upstate New Yorkers deal with the rest of the state's shenanigans. AOC and Bernie last night on CNN, the town hall was I made the joke this morning. It was like watching the Harlem Globetrotters lose to the Washington Generals. That was how it should have been a slam dunk for them. It was terrible. They freaked out over a question about Chuck Schumer being primaried by AOC. How are New Yorkers taking that whole possible Senate primary situation? Because that's obviously a bigger swath of the state, the entire state.
Well, my limited interactions that I had with individuals and talking to people on the ground in upstate New York, both the Utica area and Rochester, is that there's dissatisfaction with Chuck Schumer. They are strongly in favor, I think, of term limits and putting an end to Chuck Schumer's time. He spent most of his career, obviously, serving in Congress, first in the House and then in the Senate, and now as the Democrat leader. So deep dissatisfaction with his leadership, I think, particularly over this government shutdown, which a lot of people just don't understand what the Schumer strategy is here. It doesn't make any sense. Not
There's
only
a strategy,
maybe not, but I'd say the second thing is, they're just focused on issues that are completely misaligned with where the voters, at least in upstate New York, are. For instance, I was talking to a friend who, is no huge fan of President Trump, who was saying that if cities like Rochester and Syracuse, were a little bit larger, they'd be candidates to get the National Guard, given some of the crime issues that they're experiencing. And those are those issues that I think the bread and butter issues that Donald Trump tapped into in the 2024 election that voters care about. The Democrats, even to this day, are ignoring. And so when you hear somebody like a Hakeem Jeffries or a Chuck Schumer, both of whom are from New York, talk about why they're in politics today, and that sole reason seems to be to oppose Donald Trump, I think it falls flat with a lot of voters.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what never falls flat with voters, since you mentioned Hakeem Jeffries, dropping fat beats and good rhymes. And Hakeem Jeffries' latest strategy, I guess we're calling it, is to get out, a couple of limericks.
House Republicans shut the government down. Then they ran out of town. And for the last 3 weeks, they're nowhere to be found.
It's really weird to watch him try to speak at all. It's like William Shatner on muscle relaxers. But anyway, aside from the jokes, Hakeem is, according to a new Axios article, and I had to check this, it's by Andrew Solender, their Congress guy. Axios surveyed Democrats running for House across the country. 113 replied. 31 said they would definitely or likely vote for Jeffries as speaker or leader. I didn't realize that's definitely or likely, just 31. 57 were non-committal. 25 said no or likely no. Oh my gosh, that's talking about a crisis in leadership.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he has completely disappointed not only the base, but I think even some of the moderates in his own party. And you played the great clip on this morning's Top News in 10 for the Daily Signal from Harry Enton at CNN, talking about how the Democrats should be in a very strong position today. If you look historically where the incumbent party is and the generic ballot, and the Democrats are just struggling to connect. And I think you put the blame squarely on the two most prominent leaders in the party right now. That is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And Hakeem Jeffries, particularly in the House, if he can't even get the candidates who are running for the House of Representatives to back him, he's in trouble.
And we all know how petty the DNC is. Ken Martin has no leadership whatsoever. Essentially, you've got Ken Martin trying to do backseat driving. Obama's panicking on podcasts. AOC and Bernie Sanders are flapping their hands like Gavin Newsom with too much coffee on national television. And amid all of this, I'm very smug because I remember when guys like Nate Silver, pretty good pollster, was out saying, wow, things are looking really good for the Democrats. And I may have been, you may have been in an interview on this show, one of the ones to say, hey, they're only up in the generic ballot by like 1 or 2 points. The opposition party in the first year of an administration is supposed to be up 10, 12, 15 points. They are in crisis mode. And then you bring in the redistricting efforts. I mean, you don't even need Ketanji Brown Jackson to call all black people disabled for this to be a communications and political crisis for the Democrats. What do we expect out of that SCOTUS ruling? Have you heard anything kind of on the ground in D.C.?
Well, certainly it looks favorable that the Voting Rights Act will see some major changes, which could probably yield Republicans even more seats in Congress ahead of the 2026 midterms. And so, yes, I do think that ultimately it's hard to predict any Supreme Court case, but based on the line of questioning, certainly did not go well for those who were advocating for its continuation. I will say this point about a lot can change over the course of the next year. I think it's ultimately going to come down to how people view their personal finances. And again, some of those issues that we know Donald Trump did a much more effective job of running against Kamala Harris on in 2024. It's going to be incumbent upon Republicans to make the case that the policies they've enacted under Trump are going to yield better results than what they experienced under Democrats. And I think if they're able to do that, they'll be in a strong position to make an argument that they should retain the power that they have today.
It's a wild time to see Cortez Masto of Nevada be the voice of reason. I mean, of course, alongside Fetterman, who's, actually usually the voice of reason right now in the party. Excited to see some of the upcoming news. As always, Rob Bluey, thanks for breaking it down with us on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Tony.
Radio crew, we're going to let you guys head over to the commercial. Continue on the live stream before we get to Julio Rosas and Nick Sortor on the ground in Chicago. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, over on the live stream side of things, a couple of excellent points. First of all, I have learned the great truth of how to pronounce the river in Cleveland. It's the Cuyahoga. I know. I too am impressed. And also, I've also been corrected by the valiant people of North Dakota. Is it the Red River? In the Red River Valley flows north between Minnesota and Fargo, right along that border. So I stand absolutely corrected on that, but it is the only river that I know of. The Ohio and the Cuyahoga do not flow north, at least not in an average. So that all said, the other side of the Democrat strategy right now appears to be leaning into the shutdown. So Bernie could not feasibly grasp when asked by someone if Schumer's leadership was unacceptable, what the answer was out of the shutdown. And he just blamed it on House Speaker Mike Johnson, which is really weird. That's like someone suggesting that these apples taste strange. You look over and they're eating an orange, like rind and all. So here's Bernie Sanders on the Schumer shutdown deflecting. It just, again, really, really weak strategy.
How do you think this shutdown reflects on Chuck Schumer's leadership?
Well, I think it reflects more on Mike Johnson's leadership and President Trump's leadership. This is a leadership which said it's okay to give well, how do you feel? You tell me. Think it's a good idea to give $1 trillion in tax breaks?
Oh, I love it. I love that. The old town hall strategy of I have no idea what to say. So what about you? What do you think? Do you have any pudding in that jacket of yours? I'm sitting in front of you. I don't even know if you're really there. You have sideburns and it's 2025. I'm getting really nervous.
To the richest people in the country and then make massive cuts to healthcare for working class people?
I think Chuck Schumer has voted for continuing resolutions 13 times in the last 4 years, and he has the opportunity to vote for one again, but he's refusing to come to the table.
I like that very much. It's like, per my last email, answer the stinking question, you old socialist codger. And he's like, I thought this is supposed to happen. Only AOC and I are supposed to chat in the dark alone. Incredible strategy. This is across the board. So in the J. Jones Miyares debate, after he got done pseudo apologizing, then J. Jones came out and pivoted to, again, the only strategy they have, Trump is bad.
And the stakes of this race are too high for it to be about anything else. Because when Donald Trump fires workers, defunds our schools, and levies tariffs that destroy our regional economies, sends armed troops into cities and defunds law enforcement,
He's not defunding law enforcement, you big chicken liar. And again, you're running for Attorney General of Virginia. What does that have to do with education or the price of rice in Chattanooga. I'm not quite sure what he thinks he's going for here. And that's really across the board. There's nothing useful about this. And that, of course, brings us to the last strategy they have, which is the No Kings protests and a couple of riots. So we're going to head over to Nick Sortor and Julio Rosas. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
We go over now live from beautiful Chirac, Illinois, J.B. Pritzker's playground to talk to two of the finest Riot reporters that we know, Julio Rosas of The Blaze and Nick Sortor, he of the number one public enemy in Portland variety. Gentlemen, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tony. Appreciate you having me.
So let's dig right into the specifics of the current ICE operational details here. I know there's a lot of movement on the ground with protesters appearing to use vehicles in order to kind of stall ICE agents or Border Patrol agents, and then these crowds show up right after. You guys track a lot of the crowd movement. How coordinated are the traffic kind of accident situations to these instantaneous protest groups descending on them?
Well, it just depends because, it depends on the city, right? I mean, Chicago has proven itself to be very confrontational. They make no qualms about that. I mean, they're just certainly not afraid of Chicago police in general. So naturally, that was going to translate over to DHS. That is something similar that we've seen in Los Angeles as well, with using cars and getting people as quickly as they can to an operation. So they're learning from each other, and I think Nick, he'll certainly, he's seen some of that where they take cues from what works in places like Portland or New York, or Boston even kind of popped off the other day. So this is it. It's just a continuation of what we've seen, and it's because that they see that deportations are not stopping, so naturally they're going to escalate their tactics.
Nick, what do you think? Is there a kind of a rise in the car maneuvers and kind of the instant protest, we shall not be moved, descending on the groups there?
Yeah, I think there's a big problem with people out here, especially in Chirac, being emboldened because the courts keep shutting down every single maneuver that this administration tries to make, so they feel like they're untouchable. I mean, if just a little bit behind me here, you may not be able to see it because they shut all the lights off. I don't know if that's because of the Schumer shutdown or what it is, but all the lights have gone out for whatever reason. They had to take down the fence that's outside the ICE facility here. Why? I don't know how the fence could possibly be unconstitutional. I don't remember that part of the Constitution. Maybe somebody can enlighten me on that. But, they did this just ahead of this No King's Day protest that is scheduled for here as well as many other cities across the country. And they're not allowed to deploy the National Guard. The judge was like, well, you can federalize them, but you can't deploy them. I'm not really sure what the National Guard is for if you can't use it to guard national properties, such as the ICE facility out here. What am I missing?
That's exactly what I wanted to ask both of you, at least on the frame of when states' laws and rulings and then federal laws and rulings are allowed to apply. And Julio, that kind of brings an interesting point. If the National Guard under federalized condition are not allowed to be stationed at federal buildings, how then is Illinois and the Cook County judge under J.B. Pritzker's direction allowed to ban federal law enforcement from inside court rooms and facilities in order to make arrests on illegal immigrants? Why are we playing by a double standard here?
Because we're in a clown world. But seriously, because I hate to go back to the fence, but the reason why that's so important is because now that there's no longer a fence, they're going to have to put, the DHS and the feds are going to have to put way more agents on the line to prevent people from causing any disruption or any damage. We were seeing that prior to the fence installment. And so that's why the president wanted to send in the National Guard, because they're a force multiplier in addition to the fence. But now they can't have the National Guard. They can't have the fence. So they're kind of back to square one. And so now instead of those agents being out there making arrests, they're going to have to be doing, guard duty, which, okay,
Right.
that is something that they can do, but they're being hamstrung at every corner. And that's why it's very concerning that you have, the courts and the city and the state leadership in Illinois and elsewhere basically having an insurrection, like an actual insurrection. Like this is not just the street activists, right? They are being helped by the leadership, by them antagonizing it and making decisions to make the situation worse.
I mean, it's kind of the ultimate flip here. You have the Illinois authorities doing everything they can to assist the protesters and the rioters by taking down the fence. And then they're doing everything they can to essentially put federal law enforcement and civilians in Chicago at risk. And it's a very sketchy situation. Nick, I didn't realize they had all the fencing taken down. Along those lines, with the court system, have you seen any Antifa individuals essentially right back out on the streets after arrest? I know that there have been judges releasing people back out onto the streets.
Well, I mean, Chicago and Portland are very similar in that regard, where you, unless you are a conservative journalist, you're pretty much just turned around immediately and thrown back out on the street. That's its average time is about 2 hours, right? But for me, it was 6. We'll talk about that some other time. But I'm waiting for a judge to make some sort of order now to unlock the front door of the ICE facility, because that's where we're headed at this point. I don't know. You can't have a fence. We can't have a fence outside of the ICE facility. I mean, what are we in? This is clown world, guys. Come on.
So I want to move forward to the other side of clown world here, to the delivering of materials. And I'm not talking about clown horns and red noses. Of course, there's been video footage showing U-Haul and other unmarked vehicles dropping off riot supplies. And this is right ahead of the No Kings protests. I'm not seeing people pass out posters and paint stirring sticks to tape them to. I'm seeing people hand out gas masks and these half trash cans and other heavy materials that are being used to bolster kind of riot, essentially to outlast things like tear gas and pepper ball deployment. Julio, are you seeing are you seeing any of that? First of all, either of you, if you've seen any of that, let us know. But additionally, are you seeing Chicago police also start to use pepper balls and tear gas more as the crowds become unruly, or is that just federal agents?
No, all those have been federal agents, and it's because it's really weird, because after they got that stand down order, after that defensive shooting, what was it, last week or the week before, the Chicago police are starting to show up to, they showed up yesterday during this confrontation that the federal agents had with people showing up after the scene of a car crash. But they're not equipped for riot duty. That's the problem. So that it appears that the city leadership and the police chief and whatever, they're ordering their guys to do the bare minimum and to show up.
Well, like show up and like check the meter, like a meter maid?
Kind of, yeah. So when federal agents have to deploy tear gas because the situation has gotten so out of control that that's what it requires, Chicago police are not able to do anything except have to walk away because they don't have a gas mask. They don't have the helmets. They don't have like the extra long, police sticks to do crowd control. And to me, at this point, it's like, well, why don't they have those things right now? Because this has happened multiple times already. And so to me, it just seems like they're setting up the police to fail so that they can then blame the feds by saying, oh, well, they tear gas our cops. It's like, yeah, because you guys aren't doing your job.
Nick, I want to pitch that over to you. What do you think that federal officials are looking for as kind of a way to mitigate the maybe the tear gassing of Chicago police that aren't showing up with gas masks? I guess they're, showing up with career day balloons or whatever.
You know what? If the Chicago police are going to show up and not do anything about the standoff from these, this is a little bit different than Portland. Just to be clear,
right?
We're dealing with violent Latin American gangs that are out on the street here, going head to head with ICE agents.
Cartels openly putting out hits on federal agents.
Right. So I don't think we have time to worry about the Chicago. If the Chicago police want to go out there so they can get their pictures and say, "Oh, look, we're helping," I'm sorry, like, go help over there. Again, we're gonna take care of the crowd. The feds are gonna deploy tear gas, and that's the way it has to be, because this is an incredibly volatile situation. I mean, you watched what happened just yesterday here in Chicago, and I feel like this is going to happen more and more and more, especially with the judges that know what they're doing. Let's be clear that they know that these rulings are going to be overturned on appeal, but it's a stall and delay tactic because, as Julio said, the more agents you have guarding the facilities here and defending themselves, the less Title VIII work you can do, the less deportation work that you can do. And that is the strategy, and these activist judges are playing right into it. J.B. Pritzker knows this as well. This is part of his play. He's doing the bare minimum in terms of sending out just enough units to say that they are doing something, and therefore we don't need National Guard because the state's responding. That's the argument. When these guys are restrained, like I'm standing in this parking lot right now outside. You've got like a couple of state troopers out here at the moment. You see these clips of them ordering people out of the street, and then when when they don't vacate the streets, then the state police will do something about it. But that is like every once in a while. This is not a recurring thing. It seems to be at certain times of the day, they'll do something, they'll get their photos, it'll be posted online, then they'll retreat.
Well, of course, Julio, we've talked about this quite considerably. Well, actually, all three of us, when we were at the DNC last year, and we watched not just the left-wing media, but also some of the right-wing media.
Why are they allowed to have a fence?
covering.
Why are they allowed to have a fence at the DNC, but we can't have one at the ICE facility? You've got to be kidding me.
Oh, man, that's a really good point. I didn't even write that down on my interview notes. Julio, I guess other than having the DNC organize security at the ICE facilities, what are a couple of things here right at the end that you are keeping an eye out for over the next couple of days? Just, again, I know that you're approaching this you both approach it from different ways, especially Julio, kind of a military circumspect kind of view from your time with the Marines. What are you going to be looking out for over the next couple of days?
Well, I mean, it's not even just the next couple of days, but it's really for the next 3 years. And like I said at the beginning, the deportations aren't stopping. Enforcement isn't stopping. It's not really slowing down, even in spite of the judiciary's attempt to slow it down. So it's all about escalating their tactics. I asked an Antifa guy in Portland when I was up on the roof. I said, "Did you stop the deportations?" And the guy had to admit, no, he did not. And so, it's okay. So then what are you going to do? So when you're in that position and you're losing, and even the public support for deportations of everybody, regardless if they have an enhanced criminal record or not, it's still in the majority, right? I mean, and that's new. That's a recent development because of the border crisis from the past 4 years. So they know they're on the losing side of this, and so their only recourse in their eyes is to escalate their tactics, and so that's why. It's not going to stop with car rammings. It's probably going to go into bombings. It's probably going to go into shootings because
and that's not unprecedented, right, Julio? I mean, we saw this in Portland in 2020 where they were lobbing explosives over the fence over there.
Yeah, and it was also in Washington in 2019, and then we just had the shooting in Dallas. So things.
Well, of course, you saw the siege in Portland in which they were taping things like pennies and small. Like tack nails to fireworks that they were shooting at the ICE facility in Portland.
Yep. Yeah. And so they know their backs are against the wall. And when you have radicals in that position, they get dangerous. So that's my concern. And things might calm down once it finally gets below 32 degrees in the Chicago area. And, it kind of cools things down for a bit. But it's just going to be like fighting season in Afghanistan. It's going to start right back up again as soon as the conditions are conducive for that.
Nick, I know you've obviously spent a lot of time focusing on how the executives in any kind of a jurisdiction are giving certain orders to their police departments. Of course, the question in the Portland City Council getting involved with their police department right before you were wrongfully arrested. What are you going to be keeping an eye out for over the next couple of days? And, maybe like Julio said, over the next 3 years regarding kind of the frame of coverage that you're looking into regarding kind of the jurisdictions?
Well, I mean, in terms of Portland, I think Saturday with these No King's Day protests that are going on, it's going to be we'll be able to tell a lot about the direction that the Portland police and the city of Portland is going to go based on how they handle it. Unlike here, in Chicago, where this is quite, Julio's been here, so he sort of knows, but it's to get to the entrance of the ICE facility, it's quite a ways down this road. If you try to walk down this road, you're going to get yelled at through a megaphone, right? And they will arrest you for that. In Portland, you can walk within 10 feet of the building, right? So if you have, say, a couple thousand people crammed into that area.
Right. It's a street front kind of building.
Right. Not here. This is a little bit different. This is recess. So I think that's going to be a big test for the city of Portland and the Portland police. Are they going to do crowd control? We know that they can, because when Kristi Noem came out there, and I was embedded with her last week out there in Portland, Portland police went out because they didn't want her to be able to take pictures and show the mayhem that happens in the street outside the ICE facility. So they shut down like 2 blocks around it, right? So that there was only a little place for people to stand, so that when pictures were taken and there's only this little sidewalk for people to stand on, they could say, oh, look, there's nobody actually out here. If they can be serious and shut down those 2 blocks and cordon people off so they can scream, yell, and whine over in a certain area, I think that, might be a signal for a good direction in Portland, a better direction anyway, but I don't see that happening. I think they're just going to let them run loose.
Just one very important last little question here. I know that, of course, the three of us have done some kind of undercover work in the past where you've kind of embedded in different places in order to move around with the crowd, see what individuals are up to, report that to the American people. Unfortunately, in Portland, that often means getting completely naked and riding a bicycle around. So I guess I'm asking both of you, do you have any plans to strip down and ride bicycles around the area?
I am only in my free time.
Yeah, dude, I'm a little bit worried. I know airborne STDs are supposedly not a thing, but I'm pretty sure Portland may have changed that last weekend, unfortunately. So
yeah, you certainly needed a gas mask for that one.
Emergency naked bike rides before I head back this weekend.
Well, wishing that you guys are not only, of course, safe while you're in Chicago, but also that you keep away from any monkeypox outbreaks. Julio, Rosas over at the Blaze, Nick, Sortor, also appreciate your taking a couple of moments here. We'll include all of your socials and links down in the description below. Thanks again for hopping on.
Appreciate it.
All right, really quickly here, a couple of very important and just devilishly exciting details before we get done. So, first of all, J.B. Pritzker has, since we're talking about Chicago, according to the Chicago Tribune, his office as governor has now released partial tax records showing that he and his wife have reported more than $10.3 million in taxable income. His job is the governor of Illinois. Now, producer Nick and producer Daniel have reminded me that like 4 or 5 of the previous governors of Illinois have gone to jail. 3 of them. No, 4. Sorry, there's just oodles and canoodles and toaster strudels of Illinois governors have found themselves in the hoot scow for getting funny with money. Now, in this case, what does he account some of that particular taxable income to? I'm not joking. Pritzker won in the last year $1.4 million, he says, playing blackjack in Las Vegas. Quote, I went on vacation with my wife, with some friends, and I was incredibly lucky, end quote. Now, I'm just going to level with you here. No. I really do hope that someone from the Trump administration actively looks into this because, again, when you are currently fighting a lot of corruption accusations, again, your state is gerrymandered so corruptly that you can't gerrymander it anymore. Like they've backed off of that train. All of the districts in Illinois looks like Croatia after the UN got involved. So, I don't think so, Chief. Now, this goes to the broader Democrat strategy because right now, what we're competing against is not only the attorney general race debate in Virginia, but Zoran Mamdani and Chris Cuomo and Curtis Silva in New York City are also out there debating. And you remember Mamdani's career, his accolades, right? You know, qualified to be a mayor of New York City because he He was a failed rapper, right? Mommy was a producer and daddy was a professor, or mommy a professor and daddy a producer? Lap of luxury, socialist, right? And super pro-jihadist, knows nothing about finance or law or governing or the law. He knows about opening up magical wave of the wand grocery stores. But anyway, in the debate so far this evening, I believe we have a clip that we just got of Mamdani saying why Cuomo is not qualified to be the mayor of New York City.
You know, it took Andrew Cuomo being beaten by a Muslim candidate in the Democratic primary for him to set foot in a mosque. He had more than 10 years, and he couldn't name a single mosque at the last debate we had that he visited. And what Muslims want in this city is what every community wants and deserves. They want equality and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even see those Muslims as part of this city. And that, frankly, is something that is shameful and is why so many New Yorkers have lost faith in this politics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why he's not qualified. He hasn't hop, skipped, and jumped to all of the local mosques. Now, I'm gonna level with you here. I'm a Baptist. It's not exactly a big shocking secret. Do you know where I am on Sundays? At the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church to which I am a member of, if I can help it. I'm not traveling or something like that. I don't usually visit a lot of Methodist churches. I don't really attend Mass. I don't go to synagogue on Saturdays. I don't go to mosques. And if I ever ran for office, I understand you have to meet people where you are. It is not a bad thing if a politician doesn't show up at various religious institutions. Why? I'm really just not a huge fan of the mixing the church and politics, is like the church being the backer for the politician. And I say that having some disagreements with friends of mine in local politics who, don't exactly participate in that rule. For me, it's a personal preference. But saying that Chris Cuomo's not qualified to be mayor from the failed rapper because he's not been to some mosques. I also love what all Muslims in America want is equality. I looked at the most Muslim community in America, that being Dearborn, Michigan, and you know what I found? That's not what people in Dearborn, Michigan are chanting for. We want to just be left alone in equality. No. I'm hearing chants of, the Sharia thing. And then, of course, death to America and kill the Jews said in Arabic in Dearborn, Michigan, and chants. I will remind you that there was a significant amount of support lost for Kamala Harris because the Trump campaign put up a Republican, a right-leaning group. I don't think the Trump campaign did it. A right-leaning group in Michigan, in Dearborn, said Kamala Harris is for Israel, right in Dearborn, Michigan. And it really upset people in Dearborn. So as far as equality is concerned, I don't know about that one, buddy. The Democrat strategy is just the same stuff they've always tried. Run on feeling offended because you didn't check enough boxes. Pretend to care. It's all about you. Sure, I said I want you dead. Sure, the governor candidate in Virginia says that she wants you to, die if you get too old. But hey, I care about you. Nameless person number 50716, who I will ban from banks and social media if you think the wrong thoughts. And then, of course, what you're entitled to. It's all about healthcare. You don't need to force people to give you medical care and to help you suicide. That's the Democrat platform. Also, of course, Orange Man bad. Amazing. By the way, it's not just Harry Enton at CNN who's now essentially in full-blown panic. I mentioned Nate Silver in the Rob Bluey interview. He's now over on X getting roasted by the left because he's talking about the Democrats. Essentially, they have no possible path forward. It doesn't even need to have a redistricting effort at this point because the Democrats have no strategy on the shutdown. They've already owned the shutdown on media. And when they're not doing that, they're calling anyone they don't like a fascist and calling for open murder. They're fighting amongst themselves. No one wants to support Hakeem for minority leader, but they don't have a second. You ask AOC about leadership, and she spazzes out. Bernie Sanders flapping his arms like he's trying to take off in The Rescuers. I'm not really sure at this point what they have. They're not really sure at this point what they have. So again, on the right, continuing to not screw up is the best maneuver. Just don't make mistakes. Now, for some, if you're an overweight 35-year-old in New York, sometimes you may make mistakes, like typing really gross, stupid, disgusting messages in your group chats, thinking, oh, no one will ever find this. Yeah, that's a mistake, moron. Or you're in a congressional office, and maybe to be funny, maybe because you're serious for some reason, you have an American flag pinned up on some bulletin board that does some kind of weird swastika thing with the stripes because you're a freaking idiot. And someone should have fired you long ago. All you got to do to win midterms, I'm going to tell you the secret, don't screw it up. That's it. You know what? You don't want to get caught in a scandal. Don't do scandalous things. Presto. Because right now, the Democrats are not stepping on their own feet. They are dragging themselves and rolling around like a cat in sunlight through broken glass, rusty nails, and according to AOC, flaming rivers in Cleveland, the most rural place in all of America. So take heart, of course, that right now there's an incredible time for opportunity. But do not underestimate Republicans' greatest ability of all: snatching defeat from the jaws of victory for really stupid, goofy reasons. Marjorie Taylor Greene's trying that right now by saying, really, it's just Republicans don't like me because I'm a strong woman, and real men, they elevate women, especially the Democrat line. If you disagree with the woman, it's because you think that she's weak. Or maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene's an idiot. And the rest of the Republican caucus in the Trump camp, in the conservative camp, and in the establishment and libertarian camps, getting rid of her is a good thing. Get rid of the garbage. You don't have to carry around a sack of garbage. We've got incredible momentum right now. The Democrats are the party of carrying around deadbeats like Zoran Mandani. Take heart. Good stuff, great times. I'm going down tomorrow to Orlando to speak at the Moms for Liberty Joyful Warrior Summit because the parental rights fight is not over. I mean, especially when you have weirdo creeps saying that he wants people's wife and children dead. That's why he's running for the top law enforcement position in Virginia. So thank you very much for tuning in. Really appreciate y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. Same great time, different place, but the same right here on YouTube, X, Rumble, and then, of course, the podcast services and our syndication partners. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Take care.